question still remains before you walk right out that door. Will you turn and look at me once more? Why we cause this pain? Where did all the anger start and love just turn?
Hi, Jay Fallon. Thank you for listening or viewing, whichever one you're doing, to the Slippery Slope podcast. Listen, there's a few things I just want to go over, a couple of stories that really piqued my interest the last week while I was away doing all the other things that I do when I'm not sitting here talking to you. Now, obviously, we had the premiere, China's premiere. Uh, would you believe I actually actually learnt Mandarin for a while? Anyway, it's a different thing. So he's visited Australia. They were calling it panda diplomacy there in the news for a while, and going on about hoping Australia and China's relationships are getting back on track. I was going to read this story, and it really annoys me the way we just the way we play such a subservient role when it comes to the Chinese government. We know that there's all these issues here, but we are just so dependent, so addicted to the money, and that's all. It's just about the money. And we leave Australia, we just check our morals, we check our ethics at the gate, and we walk through and say, well, it's just about the money. It's all about the money. We can overlook all the moral issues, overlook all the ethics, overlook all these human rights issues, because it's just about the money. So this story here says, yeah, Chinese premier. He says that ties. He says that they're back on track as he arrives in Australia. So in short, the Chinese premier Li Qiang has arrived in Adelaide, marking the first visit by a Chinese premier in 7 years. This is because the pandas are at the Adelaide Zoo. Speaking at the airport, he said relations were back on track after a period of twists and turns. Period of twists and turns where they dictated what they wanted. They tried to push Australia around. That's what they dictate. That's what the twists and the turns are. What's next? This says is during his 4-day visit, Mr. Lee will visit Canberra and Western Australia. Now, did you see what happened in Canberra? I'll just bring this story up so you can actually see. So this happened while they were in Canberra. So calls for the Chinese premier to apologise over officials' disgraceful behaviour to Cheng Li. So what's happened here? Nationals leader David Littleproud has called for the Chinese premier to apologise for the officials blocking Sky News presenter Cheng Li, or Cheng Lei, I can't remember how you pronounce that, during a media conference. The premier should come forward and apologise. This is what Littleproud said. This action that his officials undertook yesterday are not appropriate. It was disgraceful. But this is the problem. The Chinese government, they don't care. These officials, they don't care. They have no respect for Australia. If Australian officials did that in China to a Chinese reporter, there would be hell to pay. Our officials would probably be kicked out of China. But China are the bullies, and Australia is too addicted to the money that we just don't care. Everyone's too afraid because we rely on China for all our, for all this industry. You know what I say? Screw China. We should not be dealing with a communist dictatorship. We should not be dealing with a leadership that is ruled by a despot. Like, there are so many human rights issues over there. It's unfathomable to us. We shouldn't be dealing with these, but the problem is, well, actually, I heard it on Tom Hughes's show the other day. And I think this relates to this very issue. We reward bad behavior. The Chinese consistently treat Australia like rubbish. They bully us. They just treat us like these, just just nothing that they can push around, and that's because we allow it to happen, and we reward their behavior by continually selling our continually selling our commodities to them, regardless of how they treat us, regardless of what they do, regardless of their human rights issues. We continually do it anyway. We have this poor lady, Cheng Li, getting pushed around or getting blocked. Yeah, they should apologize. They shouldn't have done it in the first place. They should be kicked out. We should be saying, hey, screw this. Let's not deal with China. If all these nations stood up and said, you know what, we don't want to deal with China anymore. They are just, they're bullies. They are just bullies. We don't need them in our lives. Get rid of them. We'll just deal with, the rest of the world. We don't need China. Maybe then China would back off. I think personally, I do think we're heading for a war in this region. I think China and Russia are just, they are biding their time for a war. I think China's really getting, I think China's ready for a war straight up. They're just waiting for an excuse. That's all they're doing. I really don't think there'd be anything stopping them right now. You know, and it wouldn't surprise me. It really wouldn't surprise me if they wanted to go to war before the next election, because the issue is, if Trump gets back into office in America, then you're going to have someone who would actually stand up to the bullies, actually stand up to China and possibly Russia. And China wouldn't want Trump back in office because then they know that they would actually have a war coming. Whereas if they went before the election, well, for starters, it'd probably help Biden in a lot of ways. But they know that they really wouldn't have to fear the Biden government. They don't have to fear the Biden government, I don't think. There's too much chaos over there. And, you take down the strong man. You don't have to worry about anything. And there's no strong man. There's no strong person running America at the moment. Anyway, so that was one of the main things that was happening here. So we have the Chinese dictatorship that we constantly kowtow to coming to Australia, and everyone made a big song and dance about it. Personally, I've got no time for the Chinese government. I think they should be kicked out. I think we should stop dealing with them. I think we should stop sending our resources to China. I think they are dangerous to deal with. I think they cannot be trusted. Now, another story that really caught my eye, and that was about the Victorian police. When I was going through it, I realized, so I've been reading a few things from last year as well. I'll bring up this story, and you can see this pattern's been going on for quite a while. Obviously, it really started, issues started coming to light, as they did in every state with the police during the pandemic. Now, the Victorian police really brought down the hammer. They, it seemed like they did not care 1 ounce about their fellow Victorians when it came to enforcing the law and enforcing the mandates, enforcing the rules, the laws surrounding the lockdowns. It seemed like at the time Victorian police were just, they were going gung ho. But now I don't know what it is, whether it's just police who have realized that, hey, this was not right and we shouldn't have been doing it, or they're just not finding the support. Maybe they're realizing that the community doesn't support them anymore and they don't want to be a part of Victorian police, because maybe they realized that they overstepped the mark. They overstepped the boundaries. They pushed it too far with the community. Instead of serving the community, they destroyed all the public trust that they had. So we've seen for a while now headlines like this talking about how Victorian police, I'll bring some stuff up here, Victorian police, their numbers have been going down. This one here came out towards the end of last year, December last year, Thin Blue Line. It's just talking about how You may have spotted these words plastered across local police stations and vehicles. So thousands of Victorian police take part in industrial action and failed enterprise bargaining. So they've had all these issues and they're trying to get more money. The union was demanding a 4% pay rise among better standards of working conditions. And then further down in the article, it says that Victoria Police has faced an employment crisis exacerbated by the pandemic. It says it was announced last month. So again, this was last year, December last year, that 23 police stations across the state would reduce their reception hours because of staffing shortages, with another 20 more stations to do the same in coming months. According to Victorian Police annual report, the police force is around 800 staff short across the state. Okay, so you'd think, oh, okay, all these things, these things happen. That's just the way it goes. It kind of goes up and down. This story also came out towards the end of last year. This was on Sky News, saying that Victorian Police annual report reveals fewer officers serving community, fewer officers serving than 12 months ago, despite government promises to increase numbers. Remind you of any other state that was saying that? Queensland. But then just the other day from the Herald Sun, thinner blue line. So this is, what, about 7 months later now? 7 months. So this is June of 2024. Thinner blue line, Victoria Police staff numbers are in crisis. Victoria Police has failed to stem an exodus from its ranks and is now funding its daily operations from more than $100 million in savings made from hundreds of staff vacancies, leaving the community less safe amid a rise in violent crimes. I've got family down in Victoria, down in Melbourne. I was talking to a family member just the other week, actually, and he was telling me he's born and bred Melbourne. Uh, and he was telling me how unsafe it was walking around the streets of Melbourne these days. It's funny, I lived for quite a few years in Melbourne, and I used to love Melbourne. It was gone. I never felt unsafe. This family member was telling me that it's just, and he's seen a lot of things in his life, but just how things have changed with the gang violence, the Sudanese gang violence specifically down there. How you couldn't walk the streets at nighttime by yourself anymore. You wouldn't want to go out walking your dog by yourself at night. The feeling was so much more dangerous, and the attitude, it seems, towards police in Victoria has changed dramatically, because now it seems like people, and the same as we saw, as I talked about the other week, attitudes, people have lost their respect for police. And I think this has all come about through the pandemic. So if you're a police officer like myself, when I was here in Queensland being a police officer, you questioned the mandates, you got stood down. And I would say the same thing has happened in Victoria. All the police that question the mandates or would question these lockdown rules, these lockdown laws that they brought in, was stood down. And all you had was, you're just left with thugs, people that didn't question things, people that just, yep, okay, behaved like soldiers rather than police. Because if you're a police officer, you don't just go ahead and take orders, and without giving thought to the legality of the orders. You need to give some thought and some question the orders that come through. You're not a soldier. But the thing is, we had police who were behaving like that, and who were just going out and behaving like thugs. And now they're not feeling respected. They're not feeling supported by the community. And we have just police leaving in droves. So now Victoria is, yet another state which is finding itself with a thinner blue line, as the headlines are all saying. But what do you think is going to happen? The same thing that's happened in Queensland, the same thing that they've started doing in South Australia. They're going to, I bet, if I was a betting man, I would say they will start employing people from overseas. So you'll start seeing police from other nations join up Victorian police. So then what we'll have well, that's what Queensland does. That's what South Australia's just started doing. The shortage, the numbers are getting so short in Victoria. I think someone will put their hand up and say, "Hey, this is working in Queensland. Looks like it might be working in South Australia. Why don't we also bring people in from overseas to join our police force? And we'll have a nation full of international police." UN, anyone? I don't know. Seems a little strange, but this is what I think is going, and this is where I think everything's going. But this is what happens when the government, and unfortunately the government really isn't paying the price. All those officials like Dan Andrews who made these decisions, who decided, well, everyone should be locked down regardless, they're not paying the price. He walked out, he's put his state into virtual bankruptcy, and he was the one that came up with these ridiculous laws, these ridiculous lockdowns, but he hasn't paid the price. He's walked out with a bucket full of cash and just slid on by. Police, I think, have realized, a lot of police officers, I would guess a lot of them have realized, looked back and thought, you know what, we were used by a government. We were used as bullies by a government. We probably didn't do the right thing. We've lost the support of our community. They're not feeling supported by the community nor the government, and so this is part of the reason, a big part of the reason why. Now you could say, which some people I think might say, that the government probably did this on purpose. This has been the long-term plan, if not by individual governments, but by, I think it might be part of the plan by groups like, let's say, the WEF or something like that, but to cause disunity within states, within law enforcement. And then what do we have to do? We have to start recruiting from overseas, and then next minute you have more immigrants being police officers in Australia than you do actual Australians. Or maybe you have more spies, people sent here for other nefarious reasons, who are now police officers in Australia. Too much of a conspiracy? I'm not sure. Anyway, I think this is a bigger picture thing. I think this is what they were going for in the long run. So those two stories were the ones that really caught my attention this week. Australia continuing to act like, well, fools, to be honest, when it comes to China, allowing them to push us around. But, that's what everyone does with China. And Victorian police going the same way that Queensland and South Australia has gone, and that's losing their numbers. And I would say probably going to start recruiting international recruits very shortly, which is what I think is the plan. That's the plan anyway. Hey, that's my opinion. You let me know what you think. I'm Jay Fallon. Thanks for listening to the Slippery Slope.
And say it isn't real, and please don't go away. Just give me one more day. What if I could? What if I could turn back time? I'd make you smile again. And if I could unbreak your heart, and we could start again. What if I could? What if I could turn back time? I'd make you smile again. And if I could unbreak your heart, and we could start again. We could start again. We could start again. We could start again.